Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Thank you very much. I don't think I'll ever do that good again, so I think I'll quit right now. My name is Ed Reagan, and I'm an alcoholic. Jesus, that's, well, drunks, that's wonderful. You got your voice back and everything. I was born sober, and it was an auspicious start for me. It's nice to be here and be invited here, and I'd like to thank Cy for inviting me, and I'd like to thank all of you for being here. I know you're not here to listen to me, but you're here to stay sober, and that's good. It's hard for me to talk in front of this group, and I know that'll get no sympathy from you crumbs. But because I've talked here so many times before in front of you, and if I say something a little different than I said it before, 3 people come up at the end of the thing and they say, hey, you said it different the last time. Well, let me tell you something. I haven't got such a good memory, and I probably saw it a little different the last time. I change my mind as I go along on this program because there's nothing else you can do. Excuse me, I feel kind of warm. Clancy, I showed them the collar and tie. It's enough of that. Christ. Boy, it's really hot in here. I was born sober in an Irish Catholic family in Brooklyn, New York, and I learned guilt at a very early age. Alice, I was brought up by those same nuns, and they don't help boys any more than they help girls. God damn. All I knew as a little kid was anything I wanted to do was a sin, and a lot of the things that I thought about were definite sins. I remember I was about 8 years old. They took me aside and they gave me a whole list of mortal sins. It's a paralyzing thing. I think coffee was a mortal sin. And I hadn't recovered from that, and they told me that you didn't have to do these things. All you had to do was seriously consider them. And it was still a mortal sin. Well, I was only 8 years old. I couldn't do any of those things, but I'd seriously considered all of them. I was a dirty-minded little kid, I guess. Nothing like an early start, you know. I think I'm reverting to the same thing again. It's about all I got left. Anyhow, I was afraid of everything. I was afraid of everything. That's all I remember. My early life was full of fear. Every time I entered a room, I thought that when a door slammed, that the ceiling was going to come down and hit me because God was dissatisfied with me. And I was afraid of my father. He was a big, raucous black Irishman. And I remember I was about 6, 7 years old. I had a cold, and he gave me some rock and rye. Gave you a couple tablespoons full, and that's what they did for colds in those days. And I loved that rock and rye. It made me feel good and warm and happy, and all of the fear left. And I sat on my father's lap, and I put my arms around his neck, and I kissed him. And I loved him very much. Geez, what a wonderful, warm feeling. And I thought, boy, if I ever get a cold again, I'm going to tell him right away. And he put me to bed, and that was the end of it. You know, reality set in the next morning, and I didn't go from there to a drinking career because you couldn't. I had a little drink here or there, you know. And, I got to be 13 years old, and I was going to school, and I couldn't get along in school. I just couldn't get along in school. I knew so much, and they knew so little. And so I went to work. And that was my only out. And I had a big fight to go to work, and you can't work in the New York State until you're 16. So I got a job making candy in the basement on the Brooklyn waterfront nights. And the first night I went to work was the 22nd of August, 1927. I'll never forget that night because it was a momentous night in American history. Not just because I went to work, but it was the night that Sacco and Vanzetti were executed in Charlestown prison. And so I remembered it. But when I was working, the fellows said to me, "Do you like to drink?" And I said, "Yes." I hadn't had very much to drink. And they said, "Well, every morning when we quit work, we go to a speakeasy on the waterfront and we have whiskey. Would you care to go?" And I said, "Yes, I'd love to." So after 5 that morning, we were in that speakeasy, and it was beautiful, beautiful speakeasy. Gold-colored mirror on the back wall. Bartender who looked like he drank 100 years. He looked like an ad for the thing. Red brick on the floor, which they mopped with stale beer so the smell would come up and permeate the atmosphere. If the downwind, you could tell you were getting there 3 blocks before you got there. It was a beautiful place, really beautiful. It was the epitome of my dreams. And I had a couple of whiskeys and a little beer, and I went home, and I thought, gee, that's what growing up means. It's really wonderful. And I was behaving. Next night, I went to work, and fellas evidently approved of me because they asked me to go again. I didn't get drunk or anything like that. So every morning for the next 18 months while I worked there, I couldn't wait for 5 o'clock in the morning because then we'd go to this saloon, this speakeasy. It was Prohibition days in those days. And we'd have some booze, and I thought the people who weren't drinking were crazy. I really thought that if you weren't drinking, you were nuts. You were missing everything in life that was valuable. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience, and I loved it. And I like to tell that because when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, many, many years later, I was the youngest member of Alcoholics Anonymous in all the West. Everybody in here had cauliflower ears. They were all 150 years old. There were 4 women, and they looked like they'd been chopped out of wood. God damn. They would have been bad looking as jailers, you know. That was before we discovered that alcoholism is an equal opportunity disease. And I see the girls are coming in pretty good now, but and it's nice to look at some of you, and I do a lot of that, and I like that. Boy, you look much better than those old bags, I want to tell you that. I like to remember those old girls just for contrast. Anyhow, when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, it seemed to me that the style in those days was a fella'd get up and he'd have every mark on him that alcohol could put on a person. He had stitched eyebrows and stitched here and nose way over on the side and cauliflower ears, and he'd all talk with a nyet, 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 you know. And it was really something. They scared me by just giving me the time, you know. 9:45. I thought, man, I ain't asking him no more, you know. You know, when a guy has to be a character actor to tell you the time, you're in bad trouble, you know. And each guy would stand up, and I could see that he was an alcoholic. I could see it. And he'd say, "I think I gotta qualify." And then he'd tell you about his drinking, 40 years of it. Jesus, he'd tell you about being in 60 jails, 23 insane asylums, shock treatments, strapped down, straitjackets, burning down homes, 5 wives in different states, didn't know what states. 32 states wanted him, the rest of them were trying to get rid of him, and on this goddamn litany of terror went, you know. It was a failure story, you know. And I would sit there, you know, nodding like I knew what was going on, and I was actually having a hard time keeping my eyes open because it was the same garbage everywhere. Oh, yeah. And then he just about the time I was ready to go to sleep, the guy'd stop, and very dramatic. They all did the same thing. He'd say, stop, and he'd say, "And then I started to drink in the morning." I used to think, what the hell was he waiting for? But I laughed like you did because I thought it was part of the fight on for Notre Dame type of spirit, you know. I thought it was part of the cheering section. But that's the way it was when I came into AA. Now, you'd think that I drank from the time I was 13 until the time I was 33. Everything that I didn't think could happen to me as a result of drinking happened. I'll tell you some of the things just to let you know that I didn't get here by accident. I was taken to Cedars 11 Hospital once, marked no respiration on arrival. Now, that's very serious. It really is. But it didn't impress me. You can't scare an alcoholic. I stole my clothes from the closet, went down the fire escape. I went to a bar on Fountain and Vermont, and I'm sitting in there drinking, looking up at myself in the mirror, trying to get my strength back. And it didn't impress me. I went to Lincoln Heights, terrible, terrible drunk tank, 14 by 14 room, the most pukey joint in the whole world. The first time they brought me down at old Lincoln Heights, I thought, Jesus, what a crummy bunch of people. They're all winos and bums from Main Street, and I'm a Scotch drinker. And I try to tell them that, and they didn't pay attention to me. Jailers don't pay attention for some reason. They have no couth. And I thought I'd never come back here, and I had this girlfriend who would have made a great Al-Anon. She loved to suffer, and she came down and got me, and I told her it was inhumane. I said, it's terrible the way they treat people, and I'm going to write a book exposing them and all that kind of crap, you know, that we always did. And I said, I'll never come back here again the longest day I live. And I meant it. But 2 weeks later, I'm down there again. 2 weeks later, I'm down there again. 2 weeks later, I'm down there again. A week later, I'm down there again. Always for the same thing, sleeping on a lawn. I'd be walking home, and in my cunning, baffling, alcoholic mind, I'd think, I can't walk, so I'll lay down and get some rest and get my strength, and nobody will know the difference because it's a quiet street. And the lady called up and said, there's a dead body on the lawn. She never even come out and took my pulse. And so they take me down there again. And you know, it's a funny thing about Lincoln Heights. I like to tell it quick, but I like to tell it. You know, every time I went down to Lincoln Heights, each time I went down there, it seemed to me that the clientele was improving. They were friendlier. You got a hello, you know, you knew them, and you knew how to step around puke, and you knew never to take the bottom bunk. Oh boy. Oh, no way. Stand up in a corner. And you have to, down there, when they're throwing up, you have to dazzle them with your fancy footwork, you know. Oh, boy. I couldn't drink the water, but, you know, there were rewards. There were rewards for Lincoln Heights, because you go down there and you get to know the people, and they threw me in there one morning at 5:45, and really it was a warm, friendly feeling. You know, you had a feeling that you were home again, and you're among your own, and it was kind of a philosophical thing, and from the back of the room, a guy hollered, "Hiya, Ed." That's a thrill. You know, you say, "Hello, Max, any mail?" Everybody's not throwing up laughs, you know. You and him. You know, but the point is, the point that I'm trying to make is that this Lincoln Heights, which just a year and a half or 2 years before was an appalling experience, had now become commonplace and acceptable to me, and very normal, and just a part of my life. Now, I know all you alcoholics out there had the same thing happen, whether it was jail or a wife or a probation officer or a mother or an argument or a car. The thing that was once appalling, after you did it enough, became commonplace and acceptable and a normal part of life. And that was the terrible thing about it, because I didn't realize it then, but I realize it now. Alcoholism is a disease of gradualness. The terror of alcoholism is that its onset is in little bits and pieces. If we could see alcoholism like we can see it after we've recovered, it'd be a terrible mosaic on that wall, and we'd recoil from it and run away, and we wouldn't have to go through the horrors that we go through. But unfortunately, alcoholism shows itself as a few brush strokes here and a few brush strokes there and a little incident here and a little something happened there, and none of these things seem connected. They're on this broad panorama, and it isn't until you're sober for many, many years that you can see that they're all part of one story and all are connected They're all pieces of the mosaic that is alcoholism. But when you're in it, you can't see it. And so you go on to the bitter end. I was fortunate and unfortunate in the same time. I was able to earn money, and so I thought that that was not an alcoholic. That was a drunk on Main Street. Every year I earned more money than the year before. But I didn't have any money, of course. The alcoholic never has. He works on the 110% principle. Every time you make $1, you spend $1.10. So the more money you make, the further in debt you are. It's a very simple mathematical process. And I never had anything. And I went through all kinds of things with my alcoholism. I tried desperately to act normal. I sobered up in the interests of doing better. I went on the wagon. If you get sick enough, long enough, your throat closes when you smell whiskey, and you have to stop drinking. And you go on the wagon. And I knew how to get sober before I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. You stop drinking whiskey. That's a simple way to get sober. You just stop drinking whiskey. And you crawl around your apartment. Well, I called it an apartment. It was a broom closet I was living in. You crawl around there for 4 or 5 days, suffering and sweating and shaking and thinking you see crazy things on the walls, which you know are lights, but you're afraid to take your eyes off them because they may change. And maybe after 4 or 5 days, you decide that bravery is returned. You're going to take a shower. The first 4 days, I always used to think the water will bruise me. And take a little shower. Don't get in there fully. Good God, no. Just a little, you know. And you take a half a shower. Let's call it that. And maybe on the 5th day, you figure, well, I feel a little better. I got to get something to eat because I hadn't eaten in 15 days, and I'm kind of weak. So I get some Campbell's chicken noodle soup lukewarm and take a few sips of it. And always Campbell's chicken noodle soup. I don't know why. Why shouldn't be chicken rice or you know. Always the same, Campbell's chicken noodle soup. And after about 3 or 4 spoons that you sip, you try your big stunt for the day. You try a noodle. I always thought if I get this noodle down, I'll be over the hump. Never learned anything different. I get the noodle down, I figure if you get the noodle down 3 more days, you'll be up to poached eggs. And then I'd get up to poached eggs, and I'd start feeling better, so I'd take exercises, sunbaths, and vitamin pills. And I'd stay away from people who use profane languages and wayward women and dirty thoughts. And, well, I was plenty restricted, I'll tell you that. I used to read inspirational books on the lives of the saints. I tried to pattern my life one time after St. Teresa. She's a nice lady, but I couldn't make it, you know. I read that St. Francis with the pigeons doing all that stuff all over him, and I couldn't go for that. But I tried. I thought Francis is a nice fella. The pigeons even love him. Well, I was down to the place where the only people love me were the pigeons, you know. But I tried. I really tried, and because I look back on it now, I thought sobriety and sainthood were together. I thought if you're a saint, you'll be sober. And if you're sober, you should be a saint. It's obvious that... and I'd go along like that, maybe for 10 days, and I'd go back to work at the studio. My friends would say, you look great, Ed. You never looked better in your life. That not drinking is good for you. Don't drink again. You're always in trouble when you drink. And they give me that morality lecture. Oh, my God, that's the one thing that kills alcoholics, that morality lecture. Always some superior guy says, you have to drink them like me. Jesus, what a put down. Bartenders give you lectures, probation officers, cops, judges, everybody, doctors, don't help. Christ, they're all superior beings telling you how to do it, and they haven't done it. And I would try. I really would try. One time I stayed without a drink after I got off this hangover. I stayed 19 days without having any whiskey, and I almost died from this beautiful life. With me, I don't know how it was with you, but my alcoholism manifested itself better when I wasn't drinking. I was a fellow who started out full of life and vim and vigor with new resolutions not drinking. But as the days would go by, my smile would become more difficult. And it would, first thing you know, it would be pasted on. Hello, Joe. And everything would be uptight, and I'd lose my sense of humor, and I just couldn't stand people, but I'd give them that ha-ha-ha laugh. Ha-ha-ha! Gee, oh, that sick, empty laugh. And I do all those things that you're supposed to do to show people you're happy, and each day would get worse than the last. It would just get so bad that 3 days before I started to drink again, I knew I was going to drink. I knew I had to drink because I thought that if I don't drink, I'll go crazy. And I'd meander into a bar, the Coach and Horses, in the morning. And the bartender would have his back to me. He'd be counting the money out of the change bag. It was 5 minutes to 6 in the morning. I like to stroll in early, and he'd finally turn around and say, "Care for a drink, Ed?" And I say, "Oh, I don't know." Crazy, you know. And he knew. He'd go down to the well. You say, 4 ounces, Joe, no ice. Now that tells a bartender your whole story. 4 ounces, no ice means I need 4 ounces. 2 ounces won't do it. It means if you put ice in it, it'll hit my nose, I'll lose my rhythm, and I'll throw it up. 4 ounces, no ice means you have to put it in an old-fashioned glass because I'm a little quick and I may swallow one of those smaller glasses. I was an atheist, but at that time I prayed. And I let them see that I had a lot of class. I let us sit there and talk about the ball game. I don't know what season it was, but how'd the ball game, Joe? Oh, yeah, ball game. I'd tell the season by the way he talked. And I'd say, "Here's to you," and dunk, and down it'd go. And I used to sit there and I'd think, "Oh, work. And God, do something, please. Atheists, pray." And then I'd start to feel the warmth of the booze, and I'd kind of relax a little bit. He said, "Care for another one?" I'd say, "Yeah, just one more, Joe." And he'd pour me another one, and I'd have it. And 4 ounces go down, 8 ounces go down. I remember that 8 ounces would go down. I'd always feel a lot better. I'd be breathing without counting my breath. And I always would decide that I was going to be a good citizen this time. And I would join the PTA. I don't know why the hell the PTA. I wasn't married, I had no kids, nothing. Seemed like a good thing, you know. And I was going to do good things because then I'd have another one because I'd front tip the bartender, always front tip him, and then he'll offer you one, and I'd have another 4 ounces, and I'd make all my resolutions. But the main resolution is contained in the opening line of Chapter 3 of the book Alcoholics Anonymous. And I meant it every time I made it. I meant it from every fiber of my being. This time, it is going to be different. This time, it is going to be different. If resolution could have made it, I would have made it. And I'd go out and I'd go to the studio and I'd give him a couple of days great work because I really gave him a lot of great work because I didn't know how long I'd be able to do it. If I had anything to get done, I had to get it done pretty quick now. I had 4 or 5 days, and the gangrene, it would take maybe 10, 12 days before gangrene would set in. And then I'd have to go through this same thing all over again. And my life was reduced to that. And I was determined that that was the best I could get out of life. All I could do was be miserably drunk for some days and then be miserably sober for some days, and there'd be a few minutes of respite in between. And that I was resolved that that's all it would be. And into this terrible dilemma came a man who was a drunk, and he got sober, and he decided he was going to be my sponsor, and he come to bring me the message. Now, the terrible thing about this man is he did not ask me whether I wanted the message. I heard he joined a cult of religion that served coffee and donuts if you listen to the sermon, and they made public confessions, and I didn't like it already. And I thought they must have tambourines. And I saw this man come and toward me, and I was drunk, and I got cold sober in a second. And he said, "I come to bring you the message." "I don't want the message." And he grabbed me, and he pushed me up against a wall. He said, "Listen to me." And I told him he's going to give me cancer poking me in it that way. And he never shut up. And he pushed literature in my pocket, and literature, he had literature for every opinion he had, that man. And he said, "This will explain that, and this will explain that, and this will explain that." And oh, God, I didn't want his literature. I didn't want to be standing there talking with a guy who didn't drink. It was nerve-wracking. somebody might see me. And so I finally ducked him, and I went home, and I threw all the literature in the incinerator. And I got up the next morning, and there was a piece of something under the door, and I went over to pick it up, and it said, "Are you an alcoholic?" Big sign. I thought I knew he put it there. And tacked to my door was the 20 questions. Under the windshield wipers of the car, there was tracts. It was hard to find literature in AA meetings in those days. I think I had it all. And I went to the studio where I was working, and I had an interior office. It took 3 locked doors to get to my office. I got in the office, and there was literature on the whole desk, top of the desk. Looked like our displays that we have here. And I tried the windows. I thought it must have got in by some secret I couldn't figure out how to get in. Later, I found out that the police chief for that lot was a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and he had keys to everything. They got to him, and he put it there. And I went on a wagon to throw him off the trail. It's the only thing you do. I stayed sober for 11 days, and that was pretty good. And then I had a scotch and soda because I was young. And I come home a week later, and I was awful sick. And I wasn't in this little broom closet apartment 6 seconds. I don't know how they had it. I never did figure it out because they never told me. I knew who that was. And I went to the door, and he comes in, he's beating the old AA book. Well, we got the message here. And the old AA book was big, red buck rim. It had a dust jacket on it. Where did you hear this? The dust jacket on the book was yellow and white and red and black. It looked like the menu from a Mexican restaurant. The first thing anybody got one of those books, they turned it inside out. Jesus, it was a dead giveaway. You could see it a mile away. And he beat the book, and he said, "Come to give you the message." He said, "I'm going to stay a while." Took off his hat and coat. He read me the whole book from cover to cover in 3.5 hours. And I thought, oh my God, now he's finished. He'll leave. And he closed the book, and I started to breathe again. And he said, "Now I give you my interpretation." That lasted 10 hours. Then he looked at his watch. He said, "My God." He said, "Do you know, it's surprising. It's 10 minutes after 3 in the morning. And all the bars and liquor stores are closed. And you haven't had a drink for 22 hours. And before they open again, you will have your first glorious day of sobriety. Isn't that wonderful?" I said, "Oh, yeah, it's great." He said, "Got any booze here?" I searched the place 3 times. I said, "No, Jesus, I didn't." And he said, "Okay, don't drink, and I'll have someone call for you in the morning. If you drink, they have instructions to kill you." I knew that was a joke, but I didn't care. They got me sober. They took me to a meeting at the Damascus Club Sunday night. It took 4 guys to get me to that meeting. 4 men. They should take one little drunk to a meeting. 4 guys show up. They said, "We got here a little early, wanted to be sure we didn't miss you." They got there at 6 o'clock at night. The meeting was 8:30. It was 2 blocks away. I was planning on leaving at 6:30. I don't know. I went to the Damascus Club. You know, that was a wonderful thing, walking up Sycamore. I was so scared I could hardly walk. They had to hold each arm. I hadn't had a drink now in 4 days. I didn't know what I was going to find. And I was afraid of it. I was deathly afraid of it. And they had to help me up those 5 stone steps at the Damascus Club. And I always like to tell this for me. If you don't appreciate it, I like to tell it for me. Because I was so scared, and I was so panic-stricken that I could not think. And I was soaking wet just from anticipation and nerves. And standing in the doorway, there was an elderly man and woman greeting the people, the late Mildred and Charlie Morrison. Both died sober on this program many years later. And they looked like they had drank all the whiskey that there ever was made. He had a nose like W.C. Fields. He had broken veins. He looked like wet eyes. He drank for 100 years. Standing next to him was this old broad, and I'm talking about old broad. Oh, God. She looked with the wet eyes, with the things came down below her chin, and they were wet, and they looked like Muscatel. Santa Fe all the way. And I thought, my God, that's terrible the way they bring them in. And the man saw my terror, and he took me away from the entrance, and he put his arm around my shoulder. And I remember distinctly what he did. He held one hand, and he put his other arm around my shoulder, and he said, "My name is Charlie Morrison," and he said, "I'm an alcoholic." I said, "Good, good." And he said, "You knew?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "It's going to be all right. It's going to be all right." He kept saying that, "It's going to be all right." And he said, I'm a drunk, but I'm not drinking." And I knew that because when he put his arm around my shoulder, he got his face up close enough to me that if he had been drinking, I would have been able to smell it. So he wasn't drinking, and that was a miracle with a face like his. And so it calmed me down a little bit. And he kept doing that. "Charlie Morrison, alcoholic, don't worry about it, it's going to be all right." Then he said to me, he said, "That lady there standing in the doorway, that's my wife." Now, I didn't think he'd claim that broad. I wish I had a sense of humor. I would have said, "Mister, I think your sign fell down, you know." But I was too scared. I had no sense of humor, Christ. He calmed me down, but he did say something that changed my whole life. You know, it's an amazing thing what Alcoholics Anonymous is. It's just amazing how things happen here. Here, I've listened to all the elite and the brilliant of the world as to what to do about my alcoholic problem, and it's got worse by the minute. But here I walk into a dingy Actors Club on Sycamore and Hollywood, above Hollywood Boulevard, and a guy with every mark that booze can put on him, and his wife standing in the doorway there are my first impression of Alcoholics Anonymous. And when I calmed down, he said, "I drank for 45 years, and my wife there drank for 43 years, and we were dying, and we couldn't stop drinking, and we had tried everything." He said, "I spent all the money I had at the various cures, and they didn't work." And he said, "We'd tried everything, and we were dying, and we couldn't stop drinking. And we came to this group here 19 months ago, and neither my wife nor I have had a drink since." Now, if you hear those words, if you hear that said to you by someone with every mark that booze can put on a human face, and it's obvious to me, I could feel that what that man was telling me was true. I could feel it in my skin and in my bones, and I knew it was so. The minute you believe that, you've started to become a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, because the whole enchilada has changed. From a person without hope, from a person who is despaired of ever doing anything with his life, the fact that this man has done this, and you get some hope, because if he's done it, maybe you can do it. And I'll never forget that. It was a transformation that was just beyond belief. And I sat down and listened to a fellow tell some funny jokes, and I loved the jokes, and he told some pretty raucous jokes, I will say that, but everybody laughed. The more raucous the jokes are in Alcoholics Anonymous, the more people laugh. This guy talked about peeing in a potted palm. And I thought, oh, Jesus Christ, don't tell that. There's a lady here. Well, she didn't look like a lady, but it's a woman. And I was stuck, you know. I thought, my God. And he explained that he had a girlfriend who lived on a 12th story of a building that had a slow elevator in Hollywood, and he drank beer, and there was a stone pot outside of the elevator which had a live potted palm in it, and he called the elevator late at night, and there was nobody in, and he couldn't wait until he got up to his girlfriend's house to go to the bathroom, so he'd pee in the potted palm. And I thought, Jesus, don't tell that, for God's sake. Well, the reason I didn't want him to tell that was I had a potted palm too, and I didn't think that was right. If he talked about murder, I might have pled guilty, but killing one of those palms just didn't seem to be the thing to plead guilty to. But I was trying to duck under the table. But you know, during that story, something amazing happened to me, and it's part of the laughter in Alcoholics Anonymous. I started to laugh, and I started to cry at what I heard. And I became conscious at the same time that everything that I was feeling and thinking, you could see on my face. I became aware of the fact that you could see on my face that I had similar experiences with this man. I knew that you could see it. And for the first time in my life, it wasn't necessary for me to compose my face to hide from the rest of the people around what I was feeling and the impact on me. And you know, I could never find words to put that tremendous, tremendous thing that happened to me until many, many years later, 10 or 15 years later, when the young people came into Alcoholics Anonymous in great numbers. And I heard them say something that so adequately describes it, and I must bless them for it, because it's part of my vocabulary and it's a part of my sobriety. And I hope that if I tell it, it will become part of yours. The young kids come in and they had a phrase. They said, "Let it all hang out." And God damn it, I was home. I knew what I'd done that first night at that first meeting. I'd let it all hang out. And in letting it all hang out and not being necessary to hide it in front of everybody, a freedom was attained that I'd never known before. Let it all hang out. I want to bless the young people that brought that phrase that taught me so much. I hope I shall never forget it the longest day I live. If you're new here, for God's sakes, don't be afraid to show us your feelings, and don't be afraid to share your feelings with us. I'm standing up here sharing the things that happened to me in the hopes that you might identify, in the hopes that you might see something in you that happened to me, in the hopes that you might see our common humanity and our common degradation and our common humiliation and our common problems. And so you can say, if he was that way and these things happened to him, my God, maybe, please God, they could happen to me. And when you make that statement, you have the thing that you didn't have before. You have hope that you can do it. It happened to me when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. Oh, how wonderful it was. I went to 1,000 meetings. They sent me down to General Hospital. I was half of the institutional committee in Southern California for 5 years. I didn't know what I was doing. I went to the burn ward. I'll never forget it, and I got some lessons there. Went there every Wednesday night. I was scared stiff, and the place smelled like Auschwitz, burning, rotting flesh. Oh, my God, how terrible it was. But what an object lesson I received there. You go there, and the whole place is purple, blue, gray, stained with those solutions they use, and the sheets are purple, blue, gray, so you wouldn't see how bad it is. And people are moaning and dying, and you can see who can live and who can die, and you don't have to be a professional. It's a place of utter degradation. It's the end of the world. It's the nearest thing to Auschwitz that you can find. But up there on that 8th floor, every Wednesday night when we got off that elevator, that nurse at that nurse's desk had a little bud vase, and she had a little tea rose, bud in it. And she'd greet us like we were the greatest people on earth. "Gee, I'm glad you're here." And she had a smile. She had a smile, and she was happy, and I watched that lady because she was such an inspiration to me. She wasn't an alcoholic. She was just a lady who was working to bring up her children. She was a nurse there. She was doing what she was supposed to do, her job, but she was doing it with such a grace and such a dignity and such a dedication that she taught me so much. Because every Wednesday night she smiled and said, "Welcome." And every Wednesday night she was able to smile and look up and see some wonder in life, right in the midst of all this death and destruction and moaning and everything else. And I watched her hold people's hands as they died. I watched her tell people that it was going to be all right when she knew it wasn't. I watched that lady administer to the sick and hold the dying in her arms for 5 years. She was not an alcoholic. She was not a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. She was just one of those millions of people out who make the world go round because they do what they're supposed to do, and they do it with a grace and a dignity and a dedication. And I got a great inspiration from that lady. A great deal of what I have and what I possess was given to me unconsciously by that lady's attitude toward herself and the world, and what she did and how she carried herself. So I want to thank this lady, this non-alcoholic, Rita, her name was. I never did know her last name. I want to thank her. I want to thank all of the non-alcoholics who go about their business doing the best they can in the face of adversity. I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous now, and there's a lot of things I have to do to save my life. And sure, I'm willing to do them to save my life. But I must give a bow and an accolade to those people who don't have to do them to save their life. They just do them because they're lovers of the human race. And they taught me so much. If I know anything about love, if I have any decency, they help to teach it to me. If there's anything you see in me that is better than a bum on the street, that is better than someone lying in a doorway down on Main Street, if there's anything you see that's decent or admirable or clean or honest or anything at all, I did not bring it to Alcoholics Anonymous. It was given to me here by the people of Alcoholics Anonymous. They loved me when I didn't know what love was, and they taught me love. They held my hand and they listened to my garbage, and they swept away my negative attitudes. They did all those things. They threw their arms around me. They created jobs for me because they knew I was too sick to intellectualize this program. And so as a result of their love, on a pillow of their love, I got well. I became a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I found a God of my very own. I've seen a touch of heaven on earth. I regained my self-respect and respect of my family and my friends and my business associates, and I walk through life with my head high. I'm proud to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm proud to become a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. If I had something to say about myself that would recommend myself to me above all other things I could say, is I hope that in some small way, as a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, I can pay back the love and the affection and the decency and the kindness shown to me here. Oh God, thank you all for the wonders. If you knew everything that happened to me is not exclusive, I'm waiting to pass it on to you, as are all the people here. For God's sakes, come up and shake our hands and say hello and share with us. Because no matter how long we have been here, no matter how long we have been here, no matter how many good things have happened to us, right now, today, tonight, this week, or this month, I need to know that you're making it. I need to know that you are rebuilding your life. I need to know that the Alcoholics Anonymous that gave so much to me is still there working for you. Thank you very much.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.